Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today at the Craft Away webinar on the OpenAIRE Graph and its connection with EOSC and the EOSC EU node. Today, we're delighted to have Paolo Manghi, OpenAIRE CTO, who will present an overview of the OpenAIRE Graph, and Leonidas Pispiringas, scholarly communication technical expert at OpenAIRE, who will discuss OpenAIRE Graph, bibliometrics, and content acquisition. During the presentation, we kindly ask that you keep your microphones muted and your cameras off. For the Q&A session, feel free to unmute and turn your camera on if you'd like to actively participate. You can also submit your questions here in the chat. Please note that the session will be recorded and transcribed. If you wish to participate in the Q&A but prefer not to be included in the recording, let us know in the chat and we'll ensure your contribution is edited out. Paolo was supposed to start. I cannot see him here. So Leonidas, would you like to start with your presentation?
Yes, thank you, Malini. Share my screen. Okay, so thank you very much for joining this webinar. Unfortunately, as Paolo could not be here to start the presentation, I will make a short introduction about the OpenAIRE Graph before I proceed with my presentation, which has to do with content acquisition and bibliometrics regarding the OpenAIRE Graph, in order to get you an introduction for the OpenAIRE Graph. So, what is the OpenAIRE Graph? It is a free and open resource, an open scientific knowledge graph that brings together and also interlinks hundreds of millions of metadata records from over 100,000 data sources that are trusted by researchers. It has been grown through the years into one of the world's largest scientific knowledge graph, and is the authoritative source for the European Open Science Cloud. It's available and obtained as a collection of metadata and links. And of course, it's updated on a monthly basis, and every 6 months, there is an available dump of the OpenAIRE Graph, publicly available in Zenodo. So let's start about the workflow, to talk about the workflow and how OpenAIRE Graph is being formed, created. First of all, we have the data sources that OpenAIRE Graph aggregates metadata. And these data sources are open access journals, repositories, RIS systems, research infrastructure catalogs, and other data sources which use the OpenAIRE Provide dashboard, and they have some prerequisites to comply with the OpenAIRE interoperability guidelines in order to be aggregated into the OpenAIRE Graph. And this registration and validation goes through the OpenAIRE Provide dashboard, which we will talk a little bit further in more detail. Of course, a part of the compatible data sources, there are also the large authoritative data sources, which are not required to have compatibility with the OpenAIRE guidelines, and aggregated into the OpenAIRE Graph for a more comprehensive and global mapping of science. And going through several workflows from deduplication, enrichment, and other workflows, we produce the final product, the OpenAIRE Graph, which is available via public APIs also to everyone. And we also have discovery services, discovery monitoring and assessing services, and also bibliometrics that are available. And these services comes from OpenAIRE Explore. We have OpenAIRE Monitor with the indicators and metrics, Open Science Observatory for open science indicators regarding countries. Of course, we also have OpenAIRE Connect, where we have gateways for research initiative, communities, consortia, and current. And of course, we have also been developing national monitors, starting from the National Open Access Monitor that we have developed for Ireland, and it's already available as a pilot for the country, for Ireland, and this is based on the OpenAIRE Monitor service. It's important to mention the OpenORGS platform, where we perform the disambiguation of the organizations of the research products, of the affiliated research products, as we have organizations that, as we aggregate from several data sources, we have multiple organization instances, which we use the OpenORGS platform to deduplicate the names of this organization, and also to state the parent-child relationships among and inside the organizations, the research performing organization. The OpenORGS platform is also available to all users, to all stakeholders through our services that have affiliation with the respective RPOs and can also perform this disambiguation process for their organization. And of course, we have the Argos platform, which is built and designed for the data management plans. And the OpenAIRE Broker service, which is incorporated into the OpenAIRE Provide dashboard, and it has to do with the enrichment of metadata records that have been aggregated from the data sources. And all of these, the services and the aggregation of at OpenAIRE are interconnected, and you are with the federated authentication authorization with the EOSC AAI and EDUCAIN. So how we build it? I won't discuss about the left side because we have already discussed about the data sources. I will briefly mention the workflows that we perform after the aggregation, where we have the enrichment by mining, where we enrich the metadata records by mining the full text that we aggregate from the data sources that they provide the PDF. We perform the deduplication of the research products following a specific deduplication algorithm in the OpenAIRE Graph. Enrichment by inference. This one, for example, when we have a data set that has the same title and the same number of authors with a respective publication, then these two are interlinked. And through other cleansing workflows, we produce the final product, the OpenAIRE Graph, which is used by third-party services, as it is the authoritative source for the European Open Science Cloud, EOSC, Cordis, Sigma, and also other services. And of course, we have the OpenAIRE added value services, OpenAIRE Explore, Connect, Monitor, such as, and all the other services that with function. And the user feedback is a very important part of the process, as we always work with the community. And the community, by using these services, and also having also the functionalities of linking the research products with projects and grants in OpenAIRE Explore and OpenAIRE Connect, by claiming ORCID, by claiming research products with the ORCID connected ID, the curation they perform in the OpenORCS platform that we have already talked about, reporting the errors in the help desk, and also discussing case studies in forum and all the community calls we have for our services. We take into account this feedback and we perform the cycle in order to produce better and more qualitative data in the OpenAIRE Graph. And today, now we are going to continue with the content acquisition process and the OpenAIRE Provide dashboard platform. So OpenAIRE Provide, it is a one-stop shop for metadata, where you can make your data source, either it is an open access journal or repository or CRIS or an aggregator, accessible by using open, fair, and standard metadata. You can connect your research content to the OpenAIRE Graph and EOS. You can get notifications on metadata updates and enrichments, and reveal hidden value of your research through all the OpenAIRE services. The OpenAIRE guidelines, we've talked about the data sources that need to be compatible with the OpenAIRE guidelines. The OpenAIRE interoperability guidelines have been developed in order to provide a standard, metadata standard that all the data sources can use in order to be aggregated into the OpenAIRE Graph. It uses metadata standards such as doubling core data site and also controlled vocabulary such as the core vocabulary. And currently it is separated as the guidelines for institutional thematic repositories and publishing platforms, which now have version 3 of the OpenAIRE guidelines that use the Dublin core metadata schema, and also we have the latest version, the version 4 of the OpenAIRE guidelines that use the data site, Dublin core, and also some specific fields that have been enriched by OpenAIRE and use the OpenAIRE metadata schema. These are fields that have been taken from data site or Dublin core and have been enriched with more options in order to populate them. We have the OpenAIRE guidelines for the data archives. We have the CRIS guidelines, the OpenAIRE guidelines for CRIS platform, which are based on the serif metadata schema. Also the guideline for software repositories and for other research products. We are in the process of upgrading the OpenAIRE guidelines in order to have only 2 versions. The OpenAIRE guidelines for repositories and the OpenAIRE guidelines for CRIS platforms. And also we are discussing to have another version of the OpenAIRE guidelines specifically for open access journals. It is now discussion in the working group that we have formed about the OpenAIRE guidelines. And of course, this working group is open to the community and to everyone that wants to participate. So the OpenAIRE Provide dashboard, as we have already said, it provides someone can aggregate, we can aggregate the compatible data sources with the OpenAIRE guidelines. So through the OpenAIRE Provide, you can use the metadata validator service in order to test your data source compatibility with the OpenAIRE guidelines. And if the validation succeeds, then the data source can be registered for regular aggregation and indexing in OpenAIRE. We have the enrichment process through the OpenAIRE Notification Broker Service, which is a powerful tool that enables content providers, enables data sources to enrich the research outputs that they provide to OpenAIRE with additional metadata that we enrich, additional enriched metadata that we aggregate from other data sources for the same research products. And we provide them to you in order to enrich your content in your data source. And of course, we have the OpenAIRE, the user statistics service through the OpenAIRE usage count service to track usage activity. We collect and analyze usage data from a network of several OpenAIRE data sources, and we exploit usage metrics like downloads and metadata views in Counter 4 and Counter 5 compliant. And of course, we also have metrics and indicators in the OpenAIRE Monitor service, and of course in the OpenAIRE Publisher dashboard for the Craftaway project, which is a part of the OpenAIRE Monitor service. In this screenshot, we can see the result of a validation we performed on a data source. Specifically, it is an open access journal. But you can see on the left, you can see a chart with its different rule, its different metadata elements from the OpenAIRE guidelines, and you can see the number of, in the columns, the number of the research products, the publications that have passed the specific rules. And in the right side, you can see also these specific rules via title, also a description of the rule and the link to the guideline, to the OpenAIRE guidelines website. And also we can see how many records have passed the validation process for each guideline, for each rule. And for the rules, for the records that failed, or we might have any warnings during the validation process, we have a pop-up window where you can see the errors and the warnings, and you can see a sample of 20 records where you can see the XML at the OAI PMH endpoint URL of your data source to see the details and why this record could not pass the respective rule guideline. So, in order to register your data source in Provide dashboard, you have to follow these. You have to follow 5 steps. First of all, you select what type of data source you want to register. You can select from repository, journal, aggregator, or CRIS. Repositories and CRIS systems must be registered in specific registries, repositories in OpenDoor or Re3Data or FAIRSHARE registries, and CRIS platforms at the Eurocris DRIS registry. In the second step, you can edit the data source information that has been provided by the information registries, or if we're talking about an open access journal, you can manually enter the information of the journal, such as the title of the journal, the ISSN, any description that we want to have, and also state the administrator email that will be used, that will be the data source manager in OpenAIRE Provide. In the third step, you can insert or edit the OAI PMH endpoint of the data source and the compatibility with the OpenAIRE guidelines, and with what version your data source comply with, what version of the OpenAIRE guidelines your data source comply with. In the fourth step, you accept the terms of use and you agree to the reviews of the full text, and you confirm at the last step in order to finalize the registration process. After you finalize this registration process, the aggregation team will also, of OpenAIRE, will also perform a validation of your data source to check the compatibility with the OpenAIRE guidelines, and will proceed with the aggregation into OpenAIRE Provide and indexing into the OpenAIRE Graph. This is a screenshot of the main dashboard in OpenAIRE Provide of a repository of the data source. At the top, you can see the several tabs that you can go through in order from viewing the dashboard details to update the administrators, the interfaces, the IPMH endpoints. You can see the history, the aggregation history, the number of enrichments in more detailed view, and also some more details for usage counts. The main dashboard screen, you can see the number of the collected records at the top left of the index version that is published into the OpenAIRE Graph. Next, you can see the number of enrichments that have been performed to and are available for your research products. You can see the number of downloads and views if you have enabled the users count service for your data source. And of course, at the left, at the aggregation history, you can see the history, the aggregation history that we have performed in OpenAIRE, and the instance that is characterized as index version is the version that has been aggregated and also has been indexed and is available through the OpenAIRE Graph. For example, in this example, we also have another version that has been collected after the index version, but has not been indexed yet, as the next published version of the OpenAIRE Graph has not been available. So, as we have already talked about, apart from the compatible data sources, we also have a very important part of an essential part of the OpenAIRE Graph in order to define its contents. And these are the non-compatible data sources that contribute to the graph. These data sources are repositories, archives, aggregators, and other databases that must be aggregated so that we have a comprehensive picture of the scholarly production at a global scale. These data sources, we have tools and software sources from GitHub, Elixir, Software Heritage, from publishers, from PLOS, F1000, Springer, European and international funders, such as Cordis, DSV, NSF. Currently, OpenAIRE has incorporated 158 funders into and their information about their funding and project metadata into the OpenAIRE Graph. We also aggregate more and other scientific knowledge graph from Microsoft Academic Graph, Open Citations, and Paywall, registries, which is Crossref, DataCite, Read3 Data, ROR, ORCID, OpenDoor and Fair Sharing, that we have already discussed about. Aggregators, other aggregators such as La Referencia, DOAJ, and other thematic and institutional repositories such as PubMed, Archive, Zenodo, and some more infrastructure and research infrastructure data sources such as ECRI, EPOS, and EGI. And all this with the compatible data sources contribute a comprehensive image of the OpenAIRE Graph. So why use the OpenAIRE Graph? It is open and global map of sites, because research is not only publications, and within the OpenAIRE Graph, more research products such as datasets, software, projects, and other research activities are aggregated and are meticulously represented. OpenAIRE Graph covers multiple disciplines and languages. It incorporates research outputs from institutional repositories, open access journals, and other similar sources that cannot be found elsewhere. And of course, it's completely open and transparent. Open data, open sources, and transparent production process. And an important step is that it follows the community standards for interoperability, such as we have an ongoing effort to support the SKG IF model, which is a metadata schema for scientific knowledge graphs and other relevant specifications. I have a slide here to mention a widespread but it's flawed assumption that we hear some from time to time. Of course, OpenAIRE's main mission is to promote open science and improve discoverability, accessibility, shareability, reusability, reproducibility, and monitoring of data-driven research results globally. However, OpenAIRE Graph is not restricted only to open research. It also collects, aggregates metadata for everything such as closed access research products, cross-ref data sites, and many other of the authoritative data sources that we aggregate research, metadata of research product, are covering also non-open research. Well, OpenAIRE Graph assets with interest for bibliometrics. OpenAIRE Graph provides basic metadata for research products from access rights, open access, embargoed, restricted access, and closed access to open access routes, open access colors from green, gold, bronze, or hybrid open access. Additionally, we provide metadata for citations that have been aggregated from Crossref, open citations, and other data sources. And of course, the citations, I must mention that are deduplicated. If we find citations from multiple versions of a paper, these are counted as one time. We also provide pre-cooked indicators, such as citation-based impact indicators that come from a BIP Funder platform, which is a platform from Athena Research Center. For example, is the citation count and indicators from influence and popularity. We are going to get into the details on these citation-based impact indicators probably in the next webinar, where we will go more deeply into the OpenAIRE Monitor service. And of course, we have few such indicators, downloads and use. We have associations with fields of science and technology and sustainable development goals. We provide links, interlinks of research products to research funding and grants, and also to datasets and software. And of course, affiliations with organizations and countries. What type of analysis can someone perform using the OpenAIRE Graph? There are several analyses and reports that someone can utilize using the OpenAIRE Graph, such as we have geographical longitudinal studies on research production, an analysis of specific scientific disciplines, and one can also explore a particular research area. Analysis on the impact assessment, on citation-based impact assessment for grants or organizations, generation of institutional performance reports, identification of emerging trends and topics, and of course, analysis of open science uptake. How your organization, from RPOs to even RFOs, how they go through time on open science and open access. And I would also like to mention some bibliometric indicators that have been utilized into OpenAIRE Monitor. We have the citation-based indicators from total citations counts and average citations per publications. We have the highly cited papers and trends. There are also the collaboration metrics with co-authorship networks and institutional collaborations, international collaboration indicators, and open access metrics on percentage of research outputs available in open access. And also you can have breakdowns by open access scholars and the compliance with funder open access mandates. Why bibliometric indicators matter for publishers of open access journals? It's an important part for every organization, of course, and also for the part of the organization serving as publisher of open access journals, of diamond open access journals. They can evaluate their journal impact by tracking citations and influence in the academic community. They can highlight the visibility and reach of open access content. Bibliometric indicators support editorial decision-making on identifying high-impact topics and authors, and on analyzing publishing trends for strategic planning. And of course, they boost transparency by showcasing open access compliance and contributions to open science. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leonidas. We have one question. I'm registrating our CRIS in Provide. Where can I get base OAI PMH URL?
Can you please repeat the question, Manghi?
Yeah, I'll write it to you so it's
okay,
clearer.
Great. Okay, you can you can see in the software platform that you use for your quiz if it supports the OAI PMH URL, and under the settings where you can set up the OAI PMH, you will also get these details. It's depending on the platform you use, and you can go through the documentation of your quiz. If you want further details, maybe you can contact us offline if we can assist you on this, but it's something that you can do it, you should do it in your platform.
Thank you, Leonidas. Please feel free to write your questions here in the chat, if any, or comments or thoughts. If you don't have any other questions, we can move forward to the overview of graph. Unfortunately, Paolo Manghi could not be able to be here with us today, so Alessia Bardi from CNR will do the overview of the graph. Alessia, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. And yes, Paolo sends his greetings and his apologies for not being here, but he's busy actually with in a meeting on a topic that is very close to this one. So the EOSC and the EOSC node. In fact, today in Bologna, there is a meeting on the consultations for the national node of the European Open Science Cloud. And he thought that he could make it, but in fact, the agenda of the meeting doesn't allow him to come here. But he sent me his slides, so I'm going to share them. Share. Okay, so Leonidas already uh, gives some basics about the OpenAIRE Graph because for sure it was necessary for his presentation. But we will go a little bit in some more details because that is important to understand why the graph is important for the European Open Science Cloud. So let's start from the basics. The OpenAIRE Graph is a scholarly knowledge graph. So it's a collection of metadata records that describe different entities of the research life cycle. And not only the entities, but also relationships. And the relationships between these entities are semantically labeled. And we will see some examples later on. So the OpenAIRE Graph is open, is complete in the sense that we include all trusted sources of the scholarly communication system, so sources that are trusted by science. It's deduplicated, meaning that we find and merge duplicates, so that, for example, the preprint is merged together with a postprint. It's transparent, so each and every information in the graph comes with provenance information. So you know if it has been, for example, inferred by one of our algorithms, or if instead it's an information that comes from a specific repository or a specific journal. It's participatory. So if you have a trusted source of scholarly communication and you want to contribute to the graph, you can do it using OpenAIRE Provide, as Leonidas explained before. And it's decentralized. So OpenAIRE doesn't take the ownership of the data it collects. It's just an aggregator from this point of view. So basically, we are able to destroy the OpenAIRE graph every month and to recreate it from scratch, thanks to the information that is available in the network. And whatever information OpenAIRE can infer and can use to enrich the metadata records that were collected is then redistributed back to the network itself. And this, of course, established also a relationship of trust between OpenAIRE and the network and the repository managers and all the stakeholders involved. So we talked about entities and relationships. For sure, at the center, we have the research products, which can be, of course, publications, but we also have data sets, software, and other types of research products. So any outcome of a research process. These research products are related to the authors, are related to the organizations involved in its generation. They are related to the project through which the research was funded, and the data sources. So this is part of the provenance information. So where the research product was collected from, so the collection of metadata, and where the research product is actually hosted. So who is the keeper of the full text, let's say the payload of the research product. Together with the entities and relationships, the data model also includes indicators, such as those that were mentioned by Leonidas, so the counter metrics, but also the BIP indicators from Athena Research Center, but also APC costs. So the costs of article processing charges. Another important aspect is about the persistent identifiers. So we do not restrict, let's say, our interest only to DOIs, which are the most well-known persistent identifiers out there. But in fact, we also have PubMed, archive, we have handles, and software heritage identifiers for the software, but also other kinds of persistent identifiers. And this allows us to have stable identifiers in our records. And this is very important because we have a pipeline, and this is, I think, almost the same slide that Leonidas show. So in this pipeline, the records go through a different set of processes. So from the aggregation to the enrichment, we find the duplicates, and we finalize the graph so that it is available in our API, in our OpenAIRE portals, but also on the EOSC EU node. And the data source. We collect from a high number of data sources. So more than 2,000 are direct data sources from which we collect. And this includes institutional repositories, we have CRIS systems, we have journals, other aggregators that are compliant to the OpenAIRE guidelines. But thanks to the aggregators, in fact, we are collecting metadata records from more than 140,000 data sources. For example, we collect from La Referencia, and La Referencia is a network, is an aggregator itself. So thanks to that, we are able to collect metadata records from all the repositories of Latin America. And this is very important to, let's say, have a coverage that that is worldwide. So it's not only a European focused scientific knowledge graph, but in fact we have research products from all over the world. And I'm not going to explain much more of this slide because Leonidas was complete enough. So numbers, almost 200 million publications, a little bit less software, and the reason for that is pretty much clear because publishing software in research settings is something that is still to be developed. We have 60 million research data and also other types of research products, which may include, for example, methods, protocols, workflows. So all those kinds of research products that cannot be classified as publication software or research data. We have more than 100 funders for a total of 3 million grants and 300,000 organizations that are somehow involved in projects or they are affiliation of scientific publication. If we see instead the links that are available, we can see that, well, the number of references, citations is the most present link with 2 billion links between publications and publications. But we also have a high number of affiliations, not only for publications, but also for data and software. So consumers, we have different type of consumers that can use the graph. So for sure, researchers that are working on scientometrics or bibliometrics, and they can exploit, they can use the different bibliometric indicators that are integrated in the graph, or they can use the graph to build their own indicators. We have organizations that want to set up portals to monitor their research production, or they want to enable the discovery of their research production. So, for example, here we have say two national examples. One is from Ireland, and the other one is from the Netherlands. But we also have institutions that uses the graph for these purposes. Then we have funders, because thanks to the fact that the OpenAIRE Graph has the funding links, so the links between the research product and the projects, this information can be used by funders to monitor which are the outputs of their fundings. So they give money to do research, and they want to know what's the output of this research. And I mean, if you're involved in European projects, and I know you are, you know that, for example, the European Commission has the Sigma portal. There you can go and declare which are the publications that have been funded by your project. So that portal is also powered by the OpenAIRE Graph. So OpenAIRE provides suggestions to the project managers about the publications that are output of the project. And also, the European Commission can basically find the gaps that it has, because often the project manager do not report after the end of the project. So these links are lost for the European Commission, but thanks to the graph, they can also see if there are publications that are published after the end of the project. And finally, we have service providers and companies that consume the graph. So Scopus, Springer Nature, they use the graph to get the links between publications and datasets. We have DSpace, for example, the DSpace platforms uses the graph to get information about the project that can be integrated in their platform. And then again, the EOSC. So the EOSC uses the graph as the main source for the resource hub of the EOSC. There are different ways in which we can access the graph. One is the dataset in Zenodo, which is published every 6 months. And we have the whole graph, but we also deliver snapshots of different subsets of the graph, that are used in different use cases, let's say. And then we have the API. So regarding the EOSC EC node, so EOSC can be seen as a federation of systems. And each element of the federation is an EOSC node, and the EOSC node complies to interoperability guidelines, to the EOSC interoperability framework, and thanks to that, we'll be able to interact with the other EOSC node and also to the central EOSC EU node. Why this? Because each node will provide users with access to services, resources in general, and a user that enters in one node, it gets seamless access to all the resources that are offered by the others. So once you enter via your national node, for example, then you can also know what's available from a thematic node. OpenAIRE is one of the organizations that was really a pillar for the construction of the EOSC. is not a dedicated node, because the node of the EOSC will be national nodes or thematic nodes. OpenAIRE is something, OpenAIRE and the OpenAIRE Graph is something different because it is cross-disciplinary and cross-country. So our, let's say, role in the EOSC is that of providing the backbone of the resources that are available in the data space of Europe. So basically, the OpenAIRE Graph is one of the sources for the EOSC Resource Hub. So if you go to the Resource Hub, you will see many tabs. So the tabs about publications, data, software, and other products are basically those that are powered by the OpenAIRE Graph. Then there are other sources, other catalogs through which the EOSC Resource Hub populates what you see under services, data sources, training, and interoperability guidelines. So when we say the importance of being in the OpenAIRE Graph to be included in EOSC is that if your research products are in the graph and they have a persistent identifier, then they are available from the EOSC Hub. They are discoverable, and not only that, because they can be used in combination with the services available in the EOSC Federation. Okay, some applications of the graph very briefly. So discovery and research assessment. I think we said a lot already about this, but on top of the graph, you can, let's say, search everything via OpenAIRE Explorer, but we can also create thematic gateways that basically allows you to discover research products that are specific for a research community. In the examples, we have digital humanities and cultural heritage, but we also have gateways for research infrastructures, for example. And we can monitor different aspects of open science, research production, and research impact via Monitor and the Observatory. And as Leonidas remembered before, we will have another webinar that will focus on Monitor for Diamond Open Access Publisher. A good example for Monitor is for sure the Irish Open Science Monitor. So I invite you to search for it on Google, because I don't think I have a link here. Yeah, search for it on Google and look at all the different kinds of indicators that we are able to offer to them. And we can do it at the level of the nation, at the level of the institution, and we are also starting to work on some kind of profiles for researchers. So the graph is for and by the community. The graph is public good. So the graph, let's say, is operated by OpenAIRE. OpenAIRE is a non-profit organization and is composed of 50, I think, something like this, 50 members that are universities, research centers, non-profit organizations committed to support a sustainable scholarly communication ecosystem. And we work together and in synergy with many partners that are not part of the OpenAIRE organization themselves. So we're very open for the community governance of this asset. We are always seeking collaborations to enrich the quality and the coverage. We really want the end user's feedback, because you have an eyes on the data that may be different from mine, for example. So it's really important for us to get your feedback on everything that you see in the graph. So to conclude, the OpenAIRE Graph, a scientific knowledge graph that is open, transparent, participatory, and is public good. If you want any information, you can find it on the website of the graph. You can find all the documentation about the data models, about the processes. And clearly, if there is something that is not covered, you can ask questions on our forum that you can find here. And yes, this concludes my presentation. Thank you. So let me see.
Thank you, Alessia. Please feel free to raise your hand if you have any comments or questions, or write them here in the chat. Let's give a few seconds for any questions that might arise, and then we can close the meeting. Okay, so there are no questions, but please feel free to contact us in the help desk as well. Thank you, Alessia and Leonidas, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.